Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Roberto Corona. I am an Italian anthroposopher and astrologer, and in this video we will talk about the first new moon following eclipse season 2 of this October. Now, this is the next new moon in Scorpio taking place on November 13th, which will walk us out of this intense season, but not without bringing us further challenges, hopefully much less intense than those we have witnessed during the last month. So this is the chart, and first of all, let's talk about the last changes in the sky. On November 4, Saturn turns direct, and this means that there is a Saturnian emphasis during the first days of the month, a heavy atmosphere brought about by the Great Malefic. However, on November 8th, Venus enters Libra, its diurnal domicile, and this Venus still doesn't come into play much, but nevertheless, it is certainly a good indication for the month, as the archetype of harmony, beauty, and balance appears quite strong in the sky. On November 10, Mercury enters Sagittarius, here it is, and unfortunately, Mercury is in exile here, but again, it's not very involved yet. And on November 13th, the Sun is going to perfect an opposition to Uranus that you can see here, since November 13th is also the date of the new moon. In fact, this is the chart of the Syzygy. Now, this new moon is happening a couple of days after November 11, which is St. Martin's Day, a celebration placed in this month to indicate a way towards the redemption of the forces of Mars. So we can say, may the forces of Mars transform from warrior forces into forces of compassion. So it is under these auspices that we now take a closer look at the chart. A chart which is all about the new moon. Of course, the new moon represents new beginning. It is the beginning of the process of manifestation of the etheric forces on the earth. And gradually these forces increase with the waxing moon up to the full moon. And in this sense, the new moon is like a cosmic seed. It is a good time to sow, to start new things. And this is certainly the case with this Mars. It is a strong-willed moon in a very close conjunction with Mars, and Mars is giving a huge participation here in this chart. This manifestation process will reach its culmination, its peak, with the next full moon happening in Gemini on November 27. Now, the Sun and the Moon, as you can see, are located here. They are at 2043 Scorpio, in the very heart of the starry image of Libra. And on top of that, the new moon is also in conjunction with a benefic star called Zubin-e-Shamali. Now, Zubin-e-Shamali comes from the Arab, and it means the northern claw of the scorpion. And this is because, a little side note, in ancient times, the constellation of Libra was basically included in the scorpion. So you can imagine Libra as an extension back in the days of the scorpion. And this is why we find two stars that refers to the claws of the scorpion, right? So nowadays we can say that they transformed, so to speak, into the pans of the scales. And this benefic star, Zubin-e-Shamali, represents the full price, so to speak, paid by the soul to restore balance. And for this reason, it is a benefic star because we already paid what we had to pay, basically, to reach this balance situation. And they say in the folklore, it gives the star gives both a sharp intellect and mental, intellectual or spiritual powers of perception. So we're going to see how this applies to the chart. Now, as you can see, the sun and the moon, the luminaries, are in a very close conjunction with Mars. Being Mars in Scorpio, Mars is very, very strong. It is in his nocturnal domicile, and this gives an extra oomph to the will and bestows upon us the gift of courage, and we definitely need that nowadays. And this courage, we need that especially to pay visit to the underworld and to confront evil. Now, concerning aspects, as you can see, the new moon is in very close opposition with Uranus. Uranus is here in Taurus in the opposite sign, and Uranus is just 20 minutes away from the luminaries in terms of degrees, so it is a very close opposition. And we have a wide opposition made by Jupiter as well, but Jupiter is not so involved in this chart, in my opinion. Definitely, it's way more interesting the trine that the Syzygy is making to Neptune. And as you can see, we also have a sextile by Pluto in Capricorn, and we're going to see how all this applies to the chart. Now, of course, concerning the meanings and the significations of this chart, we can definitely start on the physical level, since this new moon is all about our will, our intentions, our actions. And again, mainly for two reasons. Of course, it is a new moon, so it is all about new beginnings, and it is ruled by Mars, who is in close conjunction with it. So it is a very, very strong Mars. I'd say that this is a quite instinctive Mars as well. And in fact, the trine with Neptune is quite interesting in this regard, because Neptune brings spontaneous actions which can also be very chaotic. So Neptune is here, it is in Pisces, and making this trine with the planet of the will, basically it colors Mars of this quality of being spontaneous but also messy, chaotic. And this means that we don't really know where we're going, basically, but at least we're going for it. We are starting this journey. And on top of that, our actions are inspired by the star, Zubin Ishmaeli, which is a benefic star, and it tends to guide us striving towards balance. And this is interesting because, in short, we don't really know what we're doing. However, a lucky star basically wants to take us in a balanced direction, even though our ways may not be as balanced as we've seen because of Neptune. On top of that, Mars's actions here are a sort of response to Uranus, because the main challenge of this chart is definitely the opposition to Uranus. Now, as you may know, Uranus brings sudden changes, upheavals, and Mars is the god of war, and they are opposing each other. And so the opposition between Mars and Uranus can also bring accidents, especially related to the land. And this is because these two zodiac signs, Scorpio and Taurus, are involved here. So take that in mind. And the conflict is also a little bit expanded, so to speak, by the presence of Jupiter. We know that Jupiter basically expands everything it touches. But in my opinion, this conjunction is quite wide, so the effect of Jupiter should be not as relevant. So what's definitely important to understand by looking at this chart is that the ways of Mars are very, very, very different from those of Uranus in Taurus. Now, Mars in Scorpio has not direct ways, so he prefers hidden paths, fighting without being perceived. And this is even more the case because Mars is not only in Scorpio, but is under the rays of the sun, under the beams. And this means that basically it is not visible. It is too much close to the sun to be visible to the naked eye. So basically, we can see what Mars is doing. And this way of taking action, like preferring these more shady ways, is also confirmed by the sextile with Pluto. Now, we know that Pluto in Capricorn is all about occult agreements, taking place behind the scene with the powerful. And so this definitely is another, it is definitely a pattern here. We can see another aspect of the chart confirming what we've said about the ways that this Mars prefers to take. Now, as I mentioned, there's also a weak out of sign square with Saturn. And this indicates that conflicts are not over yet, and they're not so easily avoidable, so be careful. And finally, here we literally have, interestingly enough, the very image of fertilization. And this is because Mars represents the spermatozoa, and this planet is in conjunction with the egg, the new cosmic seed represented by the sun and the moon. Now, concerning the soul from a more psychological perspective, Mars represents the planet of courage. And in fact, the word courage comes from a cur, which means heart, and ray. So we have the ray of the heart. And Mars here is willing to undertake a journey, a descent into the underworld, our unconscious world. And our actions, as we have said, are quite instinctive. So for this reason, they can accidentally lead us to hurt ourselves. And this is the description of a process that we can find here. So basically, Mars being still in conjunction with the moon, and the moon represents, as we know, our emotions, what it's doing is basically taking us through our actions to the underworld. And the presence of the sun is the part of the chart that is basically able to shed light on our shadows to make them emerge. But they emerge through our will, that is, through our actions to understand them better. But please note that this is not, for example, Mercury in Scorpio. So in that case, we can analyze things and we can understand them with our mind. This is Mars, and this means that we need to take action to go through the experience in order to understand our shadows here. So we have definitely a contact with our personal unconscious, represented by the moon, but on top of that, we also have a trine with Neptune. And Neptune is a planet concerned with the collective unconscious, always in terms of emotions, such as the moon. And this means that through our actions, we might hurt a little bit ourselves, but also others. But please note that this sometimes is what it takes in order to reach a greater awareness of what we're doing. So basically, the goal of these actions are self-knowledge. And alas, sometimes fighting is the only way to awake a greater awareness. And obviously, I don't want to say this is the best way to do it, right? This is neither the most welcome nor the most desired way to go. But anyway, sometimes it's the only way that we have left, and sometimes it's the only way to confront specific parts of our shadow that we usually don't want to deal with. Now, on a more broader spiritual perspective, we mentioned the starry image of Libra in this chart, and in astrosophy, this constellation leads us to confronting evil in order to restore spiritual balance. So from an anthroposophical perspective, this equilibrium is represented by Christ, who balances out two evil and opposite impulses, the Luciferic and the Ahrimanic impulses, basically canceling them out and smoothing out their one-sidedness. And you can find a representation of this process in Rudolf Steiner's statue, The Representative of Humanity, which is quite beautiful, so check it out. And in this sense, we can also encounter the redemption of the forces of Mars through the image of Saint Martin. Now, the star Zuben Eshamali, as we mentioned, brings about intellectual and spiritual powers, allowing us to perceive evil more easily, both intellectually and spiritually. And this way, we are inspired and aided by the star in this process. Thanks for watching. If you want to support my work, as always, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell not to miss out on future astrological insights. I am Roberto Corona. See you in the next video.